We're recording. We should be good to go.
All right. Imagine you've all heard a bell. Uh, good afternoon. Welcome to the Bloomington Rotary Club's weekly celebration of service. I do have a voice this week, so
I guess
Sam, you're muted now.
not. Your voice just was muted.
I have my voice back. Um,
Yeah.
I can find you can hear me again. Wonderful. Just start over. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Bloomington Club's weekly celebration of service. Thank you all for joining us online. I know the weather's been a challenge for everybody over the last couple days. I know I'm still digging out. I'm sure many of you are too. Um, I'm not Steve Wicks. I am Sam Udek, the president-elect for the club, still covering for Steve. He is stuck in travel hell, making his way back from Colorado. Um, I don't think you need to silence your electronic devices. You're probably on them. Uh, on this day in history, on January 27th, 1967, during a launch rehearsal, a fire in NASA's Apollo 1 command module killed astronauts Roger Chaffee, Ed White, and Mitchell, Indiana native Virgil Gus Grissom. But I also think, given our current climate and the importance of the notion of memory, it's deeply important to mention as well that on this day in 1945, Soviet troops liberated the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp on their offensive through Poland. And today, January 27th, is remembered as International Holocaust Remembrance Day by both the UN and the European Union. Um, and today, Phil Amerson will deliver our reflection.
Greetings, everyone. I hope I'm unmuted now.
You're good.
Okay. Today, I wanted to talk about a mentor and friend of mine, Joe G. Emerson, who died on January 9th of this year. Joe was 94, graduate of Bosse High School in Evansville, Evansville College, and Boston University School of Theology. He was a pastor here in Indiana, pastored 4 churches, and while he was at Boston, he met a fellow student there working on his doctorate. That fellow's name was Martin Luther King Jr. Joe married Gloria. They lived happily. Well, if you knew Joe and Gloria, they were always having fun. Happily together for 71 years. Gloria still lives at Beltrace. While a pastor in Bloomington in the 1960s, Joe joined the Selma March in 1965. Along with pastoring congregations, he held many administrative posts in Indiana and nationally. His longest pastorate was in Columbus, Indiana, the hometown of our speaker today. I've always chuckled that when Joe preached his final sermon at the First United Methodist Church in Columbus, it was titled, "When Will Columbus Discover America?" That was Joe. I know that if Joe were able to speak about the demonstrations in Minneapolis today, he would be saying, "Stop calling them protesters. They are citizens doing what good citizens and neighbors always should do." Joe was for a while chaplain of Beck Chapel and had wonderful stories about weddings held there where couples wanted to have their dog as the best man or as a flower girl. Great stories Joe could tell. Joe and Gloria and the family were active supporters of Shalom, now Beacon, and there's a Emerson Endowment Fund with the Community Foundation. But I wanted to close with just reading a bit from Joe's book, Prayers from the Mind and Heart. And I don't know if you can see this, but there is my effort to show it. Um, Here's a prayer entitled Winter Prayer, a couple of paragraphs. We watch the temperature outside soar and plunge, and it has little to do with the way we live our lives. The creature comforts we can produce within the carefully controlled atmosphere of our lives sometimes mask the winter in our souls. It is too easy, Lord, for us to mistake good living for the good life. We confess to a shallowness of our faith made believable by easy living. Bring warmth of your spirit to those this day who have a sense of winter in their lives. To those for whom relationships have been made frigid by broken promises and purposeful or unintentional hurts, be with those whose lives have been twisted by circumstances over which they had no control, and challenges to those who have blindly pursued the course of wrongful recklessness. Joe Emerson died at age 94. Some of us will be gathering at Beck Chapel on February the 21st at 2 o'clock, not for a service, but just to read some of Joe's prayers, and all of you are invited. That's my reflection on Joe G. Emerson, born in Evansville, Indiana, died here in Bloomington on January the 9th.
Phil, thank you so much for that reflection. And now Leslie Kusno will introduce our guests because all of our guests are online today. Oh, still muted.
Good. Okay. Hello, everybody. If the only two guests that I have are guests of Dave Askins, and that's Kelly Carnanan and Jim Stowers. Sorry if I mispronounced your names. If there are any other guests, please type them in the chat. Okay. I believe that's it.
Okay, we just have one birthday this week, City Needart, coming up on February 2nd. And we have two Rotary anniversaries coming up on February 1st. We have Phil Amerson, our reflection this week, 3 years in his stint with this club and 5 years as Rotarian. And John Weikart, 2 years with the club, 7 years overall. We also have a couple of announcements. Once again, if you haven't done so already, please introduce yourself to our new club executive assistant, Mandy Stewart, whether digitally or in person. Happy Dollar proceeds for the months of January and February will be given to Teachers Warehouse. And the third announcement was thanking me for covering. So thanks to me. And I guess we can begin our celebration of service. I think, Tyler, we have the PowerPoint.
Also, I just put a link in the chat. If you would like to give Happy Dollars, you can do it online as well.
Thank you. So yeah, our community service committee, Meals on Wheels Phase 2 plan, wanted to thank the folks involved in volunteering and organizing that: Diana Hoffman, Sarah Laughlin, Liz Feidel, Winston Schindel, and all the multiple club members who donated food and cash to the effort, as well as volunteered to deliver meals. Got some pictures from folks with food donations and working with Meals on Wheels. There we go. Once again, Happy Dollars are going to Teachers Warehouse. And we have our mystery Rotarian this week. And once again, you can raise your hand in the chat if you know who it is. A native of Harrison County, Indiana, this Rotarian was born on New Year's Day and recently celebrated a milestone birthday. A member of multiple Rotary clubs in the journey through life, this Rotarian is a Paul Harris +1 fellow. Anybody yet? This Rotarian once sang a duet with Indianapolis Mayor Bill Hudnut. And while dressed as Santa, this Rotarian once fell off a ladder and broke an arm. And in the spirit of the show must go on, this Rotarian Santa finished greeting the children present before heading to the hospital, still wearing a Santa suit. And it's hard to imagine something more admirable. One of several pastors or religious leaders in our club, this Rotarian served as president of 2 theological seminaries and president at the memorial service of Dr. Herman B. Wells.
I see one hand.
We have one hand. Any guesses? It's Phil Amerson. It's Phil week this week for the Bloomington Rotary Club. Phil with Mr. Rotary himself, Jim Bright. Phil is one of the founders of Patchwork Central, a social service group at Evansville that is still in operation today. And having just entered his 9th decade, Phil stays active locally in causes involved with low-income housing, public safety, and encouraging civic and faith community involvement. And I think all of us involved in either civic engagement or the NGO world in Bloomington have encountered Phil more than once. Along the way, Phil has lived and or worked in California, Colorado, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, and Panama. One of these things is not like the other. Phil continues to write and blog extensively in his quest to fulfill his vocational call as a pastor and a community encourager. And then a couple links to where you can stay engaged with Phil's work here. I think this was part of Steve's PowerPoint that I don't have anything for, but we can move on to. January is Rotary Vocational Services Month, using our professional expertise to make a difference, which is kind of the name of the game for Rotary. Okay. We sort of skipped over the International Minute. It's the way things are kind of crumbling this week, but that does leave us a fair amount of time for Happy Dollars. If anybody would like to contribute, go ahead. No joy, huh?
Hey, Timothy Jessen, unless it's the same hand raise.
I'd like to give a bunch of happy dollars whenever I can get out of my driveway to the First Christian Church that Sunday morning managed to feed 75 to 100 homeless individuals as part of their regular Sunday morning breakfast. And then the churches, First Methodist, First Presbyterian, that, and I may have omitted one, not intentionally, but have been providing emergency housing for these unhoused individuals, homeless. I mean, can you imagine being out and having to spend the night in this kind of weather? Anyhow, these churches and individuals and people that are out there helping the homeless and the hungry people, that's my happy dollar intention.
Thanks very much, Tim.
I give $10 happy dollar.
Do you have anybody else?
Yeah, I believe, is that Raj?
Yes,
Hi, Raj. Go ahead.
you hear me?
Yeah, barely.
I give $10. Makes me happy to see my good old friend to be recognized, the Rotary of the Day, Phil Emerson.
Okay.
Thanks, Raj. Do one more check.
Jeff Richardson's raising his hand.
Yeah,
All right,
Great.
Jeff.
we, Jim Bright and Dwight Thompson and others had a really excellent session on Saturday where we interviewed 5 outstanding candidates for the Global Scholarship, the $40,000 a year for a person to study abroad. There'll be an official announcement coming out, so I'm not going to say who the winner is, and it has to go through a process as well internally to get final approval through the Rotary system. But I want to say that I was really inspired by all 5 of these candidates. They were amazing, and we could have picked any one of them, and they would represent Rotary beautifully. So it's a really inspiring committee to be on, not unlike the high school scholarship committee. So in their honor, I'd like to give $20 each to each of the 5 people that we interviewed, and that's $100 of very happy dollars. Thank you.
Thanks so much. It's really great to hear.
Sam, can I
Phil?
interject for a moment?
Yeah.
Just because there's so many of us on Zoom today, and it is
Mhm.
difficult to see if you are physically raising your hand on the camera, do your best to use the hand raise function in Zoom. If you haven't used it before, you can find it at the bottom utility bar under React. So click on React with the heart emblem, and a menu will pop up that allows you to raise your hand, and it'll flag you for us because you're all tiny and I can't see you raising your hand like that.
Thanks for that, Tyler. I know Phil is physically raising his hand.
Yeah,
Yep.
I,
I am again.
I want to thank Dr. Hadawe and give happy dollars in his honor. He's the physician that repaired my broken arm when I was dressed as Santa Claus, and his great work in this community, helping start HealthNet and all the work for people on the streets. Thank you, Dr. Hadawe.
I may say this, I give $10 in the memory of the great guy who Phil addressed his story with us earlier, Mr. Emerson. I'm sorry, Jim, what's his name? Phil, what is the name of the gentleman who just died 2 weeks ago?
Emerson.
Joe Emerson, yeah.
Yeah. Joe helped us in establishing volunteering medicine back in 2006. He is the man responsible about drafting for us in eloquent English, very compassionate words in establishing the mission and the vision of the volunteering medicine. I am very grateful to him, and I am very sorry that he passed away. And my respect and love to Gloria, his wife. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got like 2 more minutes if there's anybody else. Nope. All right, great. Thank you everybody who contributed. I think we'll call it a robust Happy Dollars Week. A lot of good news floating around. I think we all could use a fair amount of good news. And with that, Jeff McKim will introduce this week's speaker.
Thank you very much. Do you hear me? All right. Dave Askins. So Dave Askins grew up in Columbus, Indiana, and has lived in many places, including Bloomington in the late 1980s, before returning at the end of 2018. In July of 2019, he launched the B Square Bulletin, a one-man, online-only news outlet focused on local government. Since then, he's kept a particularly close and careful watch on city and county government, providing detailed, consistent, and fact-driven reporting that many in our club rely on to understand what's actually happening at City Hall. Dave brings to bear his journalistic experience running a similar operation with his wife in Ann Arbor, and after that, working for daily newspapers in South Dakota. He's now working to generate enough recurring revenue to staff the operation with a full newsroom, with the goal of allowing the B Square to serve as a comprehensive local paper for Bloomington, even if it is distributed only in digital form. In addition to his serious reporting, Dave is also responsible for the absolute worst Bloomington-related puns, which appear in his Sunday Funnies, a recurring dialogue between the fish on the roof of the courthouse and a hawk that occasionally lands on the fish. You've been warned. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dave for the local paper. Every place is somebody's backyard.
Okay. Dave, before we get started, when you'll just have to ask state advanced slide or next slide as we go through.
Right.
All right, I'll share it.
Okay. So the slides will show up and replace my face, I hope, right?
There will be a tiny U.
Okay. As long as there's a tiny U. Well, while we wait for the slide to show up, I just want to mention that I did see Councilmember Sims just before it was declared that there were no more hands. I saw his screen with his hand raised, so I hope that we can come back to him at some point. I will try to leave enough time for my talk for whatever he wanted to say. If not, I will just say that I kept the advice of Councilmember Sims' grandmother in mind when I was preparing this, and that is, if you've ever heard Councilmember Sims talk uh, about his grandmother, you know what the reference is. She said, "God gave us two ears and one mouth for a reason." Um, so I'm hoping to leave twice as much time for comments as I have left to give myself a chance to talk. So with that, let's get started. The actually, could we go back to the title slide? All right. So the title of this, I'll just read it. The local paper, every place is somebody's backyard. That's a kind of a highfalutin title. And I want to lower expectations right now. The talk is not going to live up to that title, but it does mention backyards and how they fit into local journalism as I conceive it, and especially into the idea of what I call total news. Um, I'm going to end this talk with a request for some help that is not about donating money, although that's always welcome too. The request that I'm going to make comes in connection with the Be There section of the B Square Bulletin website. And that is a very intentional rhyme, Be There or Be Square. I hope that you enjoy it just as much as I do. Okay, next slide. That is the B Square Bulletin logo. It was designed by Joe Myers and Kathy Croxton of the Myers Croxton Group, and it is beautiful. I wanted you to stare at it for at least a couple of seconds. Next slide. Here's today's agenda. I'm going to briefly contrast the B Square then, when it first launched, and the B Square now. Talk about how my work in journalism literally began in my own backyard, and then I'm going to shift to talk about Bloomington backyards. And before I tell you about how backyards and the Be There section of the website fit into total news, I need to introduce the idea of total news. So I'll talk a bit about that. But then I'll end up with the Be There section of the B Square website. So here we go. Buckle up. Next slide. So the B Square Bulletin began as a local news outlet with a singular narrow focus, and that was to give Bloomington residents an easy on-ramp to understanding the workings of local government. Next slide. So after shutting down late in 2024 and relaunching early 2025, the mission expanded to include not just local government, but all aspects of the place that we call Bloomington, with a mission of helping people who live here get the information they need to help Bloomington's community, not just government, but the whole community thrive. Next slide. All right. I'm not sure why that slide is there, but we need to go to the next one. I want to talk about how my work in journalism began. It began during the golden era of blogging, which ran from something like 2003 to 2010. The blog that I created was called Teeter Talk. I built a teeter-totter in my backyard with my bare hands, and I invited people over to my backyard to be interviewed while riding the teeter-totter. Next slide. Those are two examples of what blog entries looked like. There was also a whole transcript. So each entry of the blog was the transcript of the conversation, plus a portrait of the person who was riding the teeter-totter with me from my vantage point on my end of the teeter-totter. So the very first person who agreed to do this was Renee Greff. She was the owner of the Ann Arbor Brewing Company. And at the time, she was a board member of something called the Ann Arbor Downtown Development Authority. Its rough analog here in Bloomington is the Redevelopment Commission. And that was over 20 years ago. It became a thing that people were willing to do. Even the mayor of Ann Arbor at the time, John Heafja, agreed to do it. Next slide. Let's see. I have lost my place. That's okay. I made these slides so I know what they are. Um, so the project, I would say it kind of took off. This slide is filled with thumbnails of, I think, most of the guests who agreed to be interviewed on the Teeter Totter. That's a lot of them. I would note that there were no reportable injuries ever for those interviews. Next slide. I went as far as to install one of those park signs because they have the Teeter Totter guys on them. That's outside my house in Ann Arbor. That's from a recent Google Street View. So it's still there. It turns out you don't have to prove that you're with the government in order to buy one of those signs. Next slide. Uh, so not everybody wanted to come to my backyard because when you think about it, that's a little bit creepy to invite somebody over to your backyard to ride a teeter totter and be interviewed. So I built a mobile version of the teeter totter and carted it around on my bicycle to various locations. And one year, the year was 2008, I entered it in the 4th of July parade for the city of Ann Arbor. And the title of that entry was The Totters of the American Revolution. Jeff McKim warned you. Next slide. Okay. All right. So that was a bit about my literal Ann Arbor backyard. Let's talk about my Bloomington backyard. Next slide. Okay. Now, before, well, I want to say this now. Don't advance to the next slide until I tell you. You've been doing, whoever's been doing it has been doing a fantastic job, but for this one, it's particularly important. So I want to talk about the red dots for a second. Each red dot is a place in America I have lived, and I offer this simply to provide some credentials for my perspective on commenting on Bloomington. It's not like Bloomington's the only place I ever lived. So I've lived in other places, and each red dot is one of those places I've lived for a significant period of time. In the state of Indiana, you see there's Bloomington on the left, and then the one on the right, that's Columbus, Indiana. And I really appreciate Phil Amerson talking, or he mentioned the fact that I shared the same hometown as one of the churches where Joe G. Emerson was pastor. He was pastor of my childhood church. I grew up in the First United Methodist Church in Columbus, Indiana. Pastor Emerson was my pastor. And when I bumped into him here in Bloomington, I didn't know he had moved to Bloomington when I moved to Bloomington. Anyway, I introduced myself, and you know, I'm not sure if he really remembered my family, but he said he did. But he did say something that I know is true because he said it with such passion. He said, you know, the thing I liked about that sanctuary at First United Methodist in Columbus is that it was a place, it was set up, the physical configuration, you could actually preach. And he distinguished actually preaching from just having a conversation like some of these, you know, modern young ministers do. And that squared up exactly with my recollection of Sunday mornings at First United Methodist. He would preach. Um, anyway, so don't go to the next slide yet. Bloomington, of all of these red dots, is the place where I feel most seen, most understood, most welcomed of any of these places. And the next slide will show you why. So next slide. So this is the north-south alley that runs between Kirkwood Avenue and 6th Street, runs right by my building. And one morning I woke up and it was freshly paved. That was great. And also there was fresh graffiti there on the left of the screen. Dave sucks. And I thought, wow, how did they find out that I live here? And you notice that it's in a stencil, which means that it's a message that could be replicated and disseminated really efficiently. That was important to the graffiti artist. And also, it ensures uniformity of the message. So it never wavered from the same thing. Dave sucks. It's something that I think everybody knows. And of course, I felt sort of personally targeted by this graffiti because Dave is not that common a name. So I figured it had to be me. and it's why I love Bloomington. Next slide. So this is the next series of photographs. These are photographs I took strolling through my backyard, or what I consider to be my backyard in Bloomington on Sunday. It was a snowy day. Next slide. The snow is still falling. There was a city plow out. Next slide. That's 14th Street, looking east. Next slide. And then, I was out in the snow taking photographs, mostly with my smartphone. And then I noticed when I reached for my smartphone, it was no longer in the breast pocket of my winter coat that has a zipper on it, that I was paying extra special close attention to make sure I zipped up every single time I put it back in, I guess, except for that last time. Long story short, I trudged from 17th Street back home to 6th Street, where I fired up my laptop to see if I had actually checked the box on the right thing when I bought my new phone, to see if it had that locator function in it, and it did. And then Mary Morgan, my lovely wife, agreed to help me go look for it. And we found ourselves in the middle of College Avenue, right by Miller Showers Park, trying to listen for the sound of the stupid alarm on the phone. And it was really hard because there were cars crunching past on the snow. Not a lot of traffic out, but those who were out, it was enough to mask the sound. But we thought we could hear it. And, long story short, we were standing right over it, and I dug through a couple of inches of packed snow, and there it was. And it still works. It's a snowstorm miracle. But the point of this story is that every story about a backyard has a hero. Next slide. And the hero of this story is Mary Morgan. Mary Morgan is a hero that day and every day, and I will fight anybody who says different. Next slide. All right. To understand, let's see, let's make sure I know exactly where I am. To understand how backyards and the Be There section of the website fit into the idea of total news, you got to understand what I mean by total news. It's not necessarily the breadth of topic. It's not that every subject is covered. It includes that, yes, but it's more about future, present, and past. So the B Square's mission is to make Bloomington a place where it's easy to find out what's gonna happen, to find out what just happened, and to find out what happened a million years ago. So I've built some digital tools, some standalone tools in service of this broader total news network, and I'm going to tick through some of them right now. So next slide. So one of those tools that serves the total news mission, specifically the future, is a community calendar. It's built purely out of syndicated feeds. It's in rough shape right now. It's not perfect. It's not pretty, but it is what I use to plan every working day. And so it does have some functional utility. Next slide. So another digital tool that has already been built in service of Total News is a website called thebloomingtonchronicle.org. It's a collection of timelines of people and topics. This was an example of the Bloomington Convention Center. That's what its name is now. Let's remember, it used to be the Monroe Convention Center. It's a collection of timelines with links to original sources proving that the fact claimed in a particular timeline item is actually true. So you can actually verify that, oh, yes, this actually happened. It's not just that somebody wrote it down. Next slide. Another digital tool that's already been built in the service of Total News is it kind of bridges the past and the present. It's a website called bloomdocs.org. It's a public document repository. So if a document matters to us now, it should be on bloomdocs.org, and it should be easy to find there, and it should be easy to find forever, so into the future. So in the future, bloomdocs.org will serve the function of the past documentation. Next slide. Okay, the present. This is perhaps sort of the most conventional part of what people might think of as a news outlet. It's a website um, where news articles are published. So that's what it is. This is the view of the website. I don't know, it was a week ago, 2 weeks ago. That's what it looks like. Um, Next slide. So another tool that I've built in service of the Total News mission is the Almost Daily Bulletin newsletter. That's an email message that arrives in your inbox every Monday and Thursday if you sign up for it. What's in the newsletter? Let's tick through a couple of the standard sections. Next slide. Generally, it will start off with a weather forecast straight from the National Weather Service. Next slide. Let's see, what is that I'm looking at? Wow, if I'm having trouble seeing it, maybe you are too. I apologize for that. Uh, there's generally a list of headlines with links to recent articles. So you can click on the link and read the entire article if you want. If you don't want to read the entire article, or if you're rushed for time, there's a synopsis of what's in the article included right there. Next slide. There's also quick notes that are things that maybe don't need a full article, or maybe there's just not time to write a full article yet, but it's something that is useful to log in publication somewhere. This one is an example. It's a note about the Monroe County budget order, which is of interest to, I don't know, probably 3 people in the county, one of which is Jeff McKim. One of them is me, and I don't know who the third person might be. But still important to record for the record. Next slide. There is generally an on the calendar section. What's coming up, where I plan to be. If you're wondering what am I planning to cover, generally it's reflected in the on the calendar section of the Almost Daily Bulletin. Next slide. The Almost Daily Bulletin includes always a featured animal at the Bloomington City Animal Shelter. This is Cornbread. He's a very, very good boy. They're all very, very good boys and girls. You should consider adopting one of them if you're looking for a way to add an animal to your household. Next slide. And finally, let's see. The last item in the Almost Daily Bulletin is generally a photo. It runs under the banner of Photo Finish. And the images in the Photo Finish section of the Almost Daily Bulletin come from the Be There section of the website. So what is the Be There section of the website? Next slide. If you go to the section, right, so that shows you how to get there. So if you click on Be There in the top navigation menu, next slide, you'll see basically a stack of photos with the captions out to the side. Next slide. Individually, here's what they look like. The headlines are all names of intersections or places that if you feed it into a geocoding piece of software, it will be able to give you lat longe, with the idea that in the future, these things could be laid out on a map if you wanted. I'm not doing that right now. I'm just trying to make the work easier in the future by making the headlines the place. This is a picture of a burned out shed behind the Bunger and Robertson, or the former Bunger and Robertson property at 4th and College. Next slide. This is just a photograph of an upcoming concert. Is that headline news? Well, no. Still, it serves an equally valid purpose, same as the very fancy syndicated feeds community calendar. Sometimes you want to put information in front of people's faces where they're walking around in their own backyards. And this was a poster for Vic Luna's. I can't even read that. I think he should choose a different font. Latin Jazz Big Band, I think is what it says at the back door. Next slide. This is also good for celebrity sightings. So Smith Road and 3rd Street, that's the office lounge. This is a photograph. If you notice, I went and got all fancy and colorized him. Hank Ruff is sitting there at the table, and so he's in color. The rest of the people are in black and white. I don't know if you know Hank Ruff. He's the son of Andy Ruff, city council member. And there's also there's another gentleman sitting at the table who's enjoyed some success in the music industry as well. Next slide. This one was on Kirkwood Avenue and Grant Street. These are a bunch of college students taking selfies with each other. I was told that the guy in the middle, the tall one, is really good at football. I'm not sure if that's true, but anyway, next slide. This one was taken the day after Perry Township trustee Dan Combs died. The B Square published an article about his death, and then after that, this scene unfolded outside the trustees' offices. That's something that should be recorded somewhere in our community's notebook. That's a memorial to Dan Combs that someone made. Next slide. And then this went up after the national championship game victory. Cavade MTOR apparently has championship gear. That's different than what that storefront normally looks like. And it's not headline news. And the function of the local paper is not necessarily to provide free advertising for businesses. But to me, that's significant that that happened. It should be recorded somewhere. And so I did. Next slide. So, most of these photos that I just showed you are from my own travels through my own Bloomington backyard, but I want the geographic coverage of this section, the Be There section, to expand. And I also want to lighten my own workload. So my request to you is this: as you move through your own Bloomington backyard, notice what's new, what's changed, what might not necessarily need to be headline news, but should be just written down, recorded somewhere in the record of our community, what Bloomington, Indiana was like on this day or during these days. Send an email to dave@bsquarebulletin.com with an attachment of an image. It doesn't even have to include an image. Most of them do, but it can just simply be a text description of what's going on, what you see, not your opinion about what you see, just a description of this is what I'm seeing. You can also send a text to that number there. That's my cell phone number, 734-645-2633. And you can file Be There items. I will load them up to the website and take care of everything like that. Next slide. If you want to sign up for the Almost Daily Bulletin newsletter, you can use that QR code. I am really hopeful that works. I believe it does. I've tested it, but technology, sometimes the technology ends up getting buried under 2 inches of snow. That is it, I think. Next slide. Questions. I'm ready for questions.
I have a question.
Yes,
Tim Jessen, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Good. It's a wonderful program and a wonderful way to open a discussion on what's something that's lacking in our community right now. I used to write, thanks to Bob Salzberg, a member of this club, for the Herald Times. And then a few years ago, they said they didn't want any local news. I think I may have written an article or two for you. It was on the religions section. And right now we got plenty of questions and stories about the religion section, like the quarterback Hernando is a regular participant and communicant at the St. Paul's St. Paul's Roman Catholic Church. And then the church is putting on this wonderful services for the homeless. But how can we get a better, your effort is wonderful, outstanding. I'm glad to know about it. But how can we get a better communication device that reaches to all the people instead of just a few hearing this and few hearing that. And we really need what you are doing and much more to illuminate what's going on in our town and our state and our nation as well. Thank you for the presentation.
Okay. So, I mean, the question I heard in that was how can we make news and information available to everybody? I think certainly a big part of the B Square's mission is to make sure that all the information is always and forever free and accessible to everyone. So there's not a paywall of any kind. People who contribute money to the B Square don't get any more news and information than anybody else. So basically, people who contribute are making it possible for those who don't contribute to have access to the information. So that includes the email newsletter, Almost Daily Bulletin. There's no cost to subscribing to that. I mean, when you do sign up for it, it'll give you the option of contributing. But if you don't want to contribute, you just choose the free option, and you're good to go. But I think that simply making the information available for free and putting the information in as many places as possible so that people can stumble across it. Like, for example, the B Square Bulletin has a Facebook page. Every article that gets published gets automatically a link published to the Facebook page. Not because I'm a fan of Facebook, just because a lot of people use Facebook to get their news and information. And so I want to throw the B Square's news and information into that pile so that people might stumble across it. I think the harder nut to crack, and what your question really is asking, is how do we make it so that more people in a community are relying on the same news source so that they have a uniform experience with their news and information. So the local paper in the past, I think it was a touchstone for people that wove this or weaved. It tied the community together because people had that common experience. There was that article. Did you see the op-ed? The Herald Times, I think it used to, like most local papers, it used to serve that function. And I think that increasingly the Herald Times has stopped serving that particular function where, well, if you say, did you see the piece in the Times? You could rely on most people saying, yes, I did, or I saw that it was there, I haven't read it yet. But nowadays, I'm not so sure that's true. So the answer to your question, I don't know. That's the short answer.
Okay, next up we have Judy Schroeder.
Hi there, Dave. Thank you so much for what you are doing for this community. It is just an incredible effort are there more than one of you?
There is just one of me. There are what I've added since relaunching, since I actually publicly stated, this is the goal and the mission to become the local paper, to cover everything that needs to be covered in Bloomington, everything that the local paper would cover. I've added some freelancers. Most notably, I have a freelancer covering K through 12 material. There's an article published this morning. Kelton O'Donnell is his name. And it's useful. Well, you don't have to add that, oh, by the way, he's a senior in high school. But I treat him just like any other freelancer. And I don't think you would notice that he is a senior in high school, except maybe if you looked at there's the photograph that runs by the byline. You might say, wow, he looks really young. But you wouldn't know it from reporting he's doing. He started working as a freelancer. It was late spring, early summer, kind of, you might call it an intern, but I would just call it more like, I don't know, kind of an apprentice. And then there's a handful of freelance photographers. There were two freelance photographers that covered Bloomington North and Bloomington South football. South was Dave Quick, and north was Amy Mason. So their photographs of those games were nice compliments to the game write-ups that a fellow named Sean McAvoy did. I met Sean through the media school. They basically put that connection together. And I think he was enrolled for credit. In fact, I know for a fact he was enrolled for credit for one credit as their internship, but he got paid just like all the other freelancers did. So, you know, the high school football coverage was for this fall, and now to some extent the basketball coverage is an attempt to demonstrate that the B Square really is not just thinking about covering things besides local government, but we'll actually do that, and we will do it in at a really high standard. I mean, I would put Sean McAvoy's game write-ups as I would say they're the gold standard for what high school sports write-ups should be like.
I want to also, we Rotarians owe you a special thanks for your coverage of Amir's, I want to say capture by the FBI and by ICE. That was the most informative, thorough account that I've seen anywhere. How in heaven's name, what is your business model? How do you do this?
Well, if I could go back to that article about ICE, it was, and because I am terrible with names, and I'm
It was Liz
practically,
Vital.
well, yes, Liz was actually a key piece of the puzzle. And actually, let me use this as a vignette to illustrate why it's important to literally be there. So it was after a county council meeting. I went up and I talked to, it was Counselor Kate Wiltz and Liz Feidel. And I was talking to Kate Wiltz. And at that time, she had passed along a tip. And basically, the initial sort of, I don't know, investigation is way too strong a word. My initial inquiries, Bloomington Police, MCCSC said, no, we have no information about anybody on, school grounds. We know nothing. And basically, I just wanted to report to Counselor Wiltz that I had done some due diligence and that I had not come up with anything. Well, Liz Feidel was standing right there and she said, oh, but that's not a big nothing burger. Here, let me give you a contact to, and I'm not coming up with his name.
Dave Myers.
Yes, Dave Myers. That was it. Thank you. Let me give you the name of a guy who can confirm all of this. And so she passed along that contact. So if I had not been at the meeting in person, if I had not gone up to talk to Kate Wiltz, if Liz Feidel had not been standing right there, I mean, this is what a community is made of. And if you just go to, I mean, it's not that much effort to show up to the meeting in person so that people see that you're there. If they want to talk to you, they can. I mean, Liz Feidel, she could have kept her mouth shut. She didn't have to say anything, but she did. And she gave me something I could act on. And that's why that story could be reported. It's, Liz Feidel served this vital connection to Dave Myers, and that's how it got reported. I'm sorry, you actually had a question that
business model.
Business model. It's there's two things. One is donations from individuals, and the other thing is donations, but from larger corporations. The donations from individuals, that's been in place since the very beginning. That's an ongoing effort to try to inspire more people to read, and then more people to recognize that there's a value that they're getting out of it and that they can contribute something to it. And then more recently, advertising has always been for the news industry foundational for survival. And it's not advertising. What we're selling, it's sponsorships. And the folks who've put together the program, they understand clearly the difference between advertising and simply a sponsorship. Sponsorship is like, here's the logo. We want to be affiliated with this operation. We want people to know that we're supporting this operation, but it's not like if it's a law firm, hey, if you've been injured, you should call us, where there's this call for action. No, it's just the name of the law firm. So I'm hoping that the corporate sponsorship program will be the thing that puts the B Square Bulletin on kind of an institutional foundation, where eventually I would like to turn this thing into a nonprofit that has a board and has then a life beyond me getting tired and deciding that I just can't do it anymore. So that's in the future. It is, to be clear, it is not a nonprofit yet. My initial thought when we on relaunch was, okay, we need to form a nonprofit as soon as possible. And that proved not to be workable, just because forming a nonprofit is a huge amount of work that I think is vastly underappreciated. So I decided to focus instead on, let's get revenue to a level where we can get some more people involved, where somebody can actually be paid to do the work of putting the nonprofit together and handling all the stuff that I absolutely hate to deal with. Like, for example, I spent 5 hours. I mean, somebody who knows what they're doing would not have taken 5 hours, but I took 5 hours to put together the IRS forms that freelancers have to be issued at the end of a year. And I hated every second of it.
So I'm going
I'll
to
stop.
jump in. We're almost at time. We have 2 hands up. We have Jeff Richardson and Joy Harder with their hands up. And then we have Jim Sims for Happy Dollars. So with 1 minute left, Jeff, kick it off.
I'm going to let Joy ask a question, since I spoke earlier, and my question is going to be more involved than a minute answer. Joy, go ahead.
That's very kind, Jeff. Mine is more of a reach out to you, Dave. Number one, to say thank you for what you do for the community. I'd love to have a cup of coffee with you. I am the relatively newer president of Limestone Post magazine, and hearing you speak and knowing that there's many, many missions that we share, and seeing opportunities for collaboration going forward. So just wanted to sit, if we were in the room together, I would have pinned you down, but I'm getting you online. So I'll I'll put my information in the chat and you can get it. Thank you for what you do.
Okay. Thank you.
And then go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'll be as quickly as possible. I would like to offer $20 because I'm happy. This has to do with my sister's closet. On Martin Luther King's birthday celebration day of service, she asked me to speak to her volunteers during their day of service there. I tried to highlight how the roadmap of my life has led to where we are today. I'm an Eagle Scout. I'm a member of Phi Beta Sigma, Second Baptist Church, and our own Rotary Club. And each and every one of those has a component of service in their mission. So I was very happy. I hope I touched some of those volunteers on what it means to serve and then personalize your service. And in honor of that, I'd like to offer $20 to the Teachers Warehouse. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jim.
Dave.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this sort of impromptu digital only, making this thing work. Dave, thank you so much for that presentation. I know we've crossed paths a few times in the past, and I think a lot of us in this club have. And it's kind of hard to see the point sometimes in this world we occupy, but I think dramatically more often than not, we can trust the B Square to get the point right the first time. So thank you for talking to us today. Thank you for what you're doing. And in honor of your talk today, a donation will be made this quarter to Amethyst House. I'd also like to thank some of our volunteers today. Tyler Martin Nichols for making a lot of the machinery of this work on the fly. Could not do it without you. Leslie Kusnow for sort of managing the flow of folks in and out and questions and information. Our speaker introduction today from Jeff McKim, our reflection from Phil Amerson, reporter for this meeting, Kyla Cox-Deckard. And I don't think we have a lot of pictures being taken today, but I'd still like to thank Alon for helping us sort of navigate the documentation stuff prior to the meeting. Our next regular meeting will be on February 3rd in the Georgian Room in the IMU, and Dr. Brad Fulton from the O'Neill School will speak to us about observing civic engagement. So sort of a continuation of today's conversation. And last but not least, we have the 4-way +1 test. Okay, don't necessarily have to come off mute, but you can if you'd like. So first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Fourth, will it build goodwill and friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And of course, as always, fifth, is it fun? All right. Once again, imagine you have heard a bell. That concludes this week's celebration of service. And again, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And hopefully we'll see y'all in person next week.
Great job, everyone.
Absolutely.